Okay, so it is 6:30. We'll go ahead and get started. Hello and welcome to Meet the Candidates, hosted by the Urbana Visioning Committee. I'm Marcy Johnson, one of the committee members. So we just wanted to take this opportunity to meet all of the candidates and kind of get to know where your stance is on a few things. So some ground rules. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to speak on each question, and then we just ask no interruptions between candidates or the audience. And again, we opened this forum up to the community, so they have been submitting questions to our committee over the last couple of weeks. So that's kind of the basis of where things come from. So to get started, if you could all introduce yourself and tell us why you are running for office in the position that you are. So we can start with you, Gary.
Okay. Well, my name is Gary Benson. I've lived in Urbana practically all my life. Went to high school here. Graduated from school in Urbana, and also have 3 daughters who also graduated school Center Point, Urbana, and have 4 grandchildren who also go into Center Point, Urbana. I've served a little bit on the council in the past. I've served as a past mayor, and I just want to get back into city government.
My turn?
Yep.
All right. I'm Mitch McDonough. I'm the current mayor now, seeking a 3rd term. We've lived here in town since 2009, running again because we've got a lot of things moving along that we've been working pretty hard to get going in our community, and another couple of years will, I think, bear some fruit if we can get that done.
Armin Martin, I live here in Urbana. I have a wife and 4 grandkids. Interested in city government, city council matters and that kind of thing. So I'm running, I guess, for council seat.
Hi, I'm Josh Holthouse. I've lived here since 2008. Got 3 kids here in CPU. My wife works at the school. I work at FedEx here in town. Just running the re-election to keep what we've got going the last 4 years.
That's about it. My name is Mike Benson. I've lived in and around the Urbana area for 57 years. Recently retired just over about 2.5 years ago from Benton County Road Department. My wife is retired from a place in Cedar Rapids. We have 3 daughters, 7 grandsons, and 1 great-granddaughter. I also own my own business called Benson Security. We do a lot of different events around Benton, Lane County. I guess I wanted to run on the council. I was previously, years ago, I was on the council for approximately 8 years, 10 years, something like that. And I just kind of like to get back into it again.
We'll start with Gary. What leadership qualities do you have that make you suited for your position as mayor?
Well, I have, like I said before, I've been past mayor. I'm not completely up to date with everything that's going on within the city now, because I know there's been a lot of changes, a lot of good changes in the city. But I've also been employed with the Benton County Sheriff's Office, which I retired maybe 2 years ago this winter. I think that's brought a lot of some kind of help to me as far as education, dealing with people, working with people. Also been the past police chief in Urbana, police chief for 25 years. So I got to know the area real well, and I also got to know a lot of the citizens. We have a lot of more new citizens now since I retired, but that's one of my...
Same question? All right. So I guess I've been involved here at the city level for the last 4 years as mayor. Other things involved with here within Urbana, I sit as the assistant chief on the fire department. So we do a lot of things for the community with that side of what we do. Also work for Star Equipment, which is a sales company. We sell construction equipment in Cedar Rapids and manage, I don't know, probably 25 to 30 people on any given day. Directing traffic, sales, obviously, I'm with people all day, every day, and all different types of people. and different opinions, so that's not anything new to me. And just try to be involved in as much as we can be in the community. So I think, what we have going now in the last 4 years, we look forward to seeing if we can get some more done in the next 2.
From the year 1987 to 1994, I was on the city council seat before, served on the council, and there's a lot of things that go on in the city that I think are very important things, and some things are debatable whether it's of level and importance as to how much they're needed. And I'm hearing a lot of citizens complain and comment about activities and things that are going on currently, and so I'm hoping to get some of that stuff raked around and voted on. I guess how the council will decide which direction that goes. So I'm hoping to reseat in the council again and take off.
As far as leadership, I guess I'm the Grand Knight of Knights of Columbus. We got about 70 guys under that. I would say Mitch and I and Trent kind of led the way on this development over here. That's been kind of a big undertaking of lots of phone calls every day. Other than that, I guess I work with a lot of guys and they seem to look up to me, so that's where we're at.
Well, I think I should be halfway decent in the leadership with my business that I ran, that I still operate. With my security business, I've had up to 50 employees that I've taken care of. I've done the scheduling for them. I've done the payroll for them. I've also served on the Urbana ambulance for 33 years. I was also on the reserve for the police department for 26 years and also on the Urbana Fire Department for 26 years. So I think I have some good people skills.
Perfect. So this question is specifically for the mayor's seat, and Mitch, you can lead us with this. So identify the city's accomplishments that you've had in your time as mayor, and Gary, as a previous mayor, if you could think back to some of the accomplishments that you did under your term as well.
Just kind of happens and you don't really pay much attention to it because it just happens. But right away at the beginning of my first term, we kind of unified with street signs and city logos on equipment stuff to get everything so that everybody looked the same and we were identifiable as a community. And then immediately we started working on trying to get growth started, because everybody that you talk to when I was running for mayor the first time said we want these amenities and the things that we don't have in town. And every place I went to talk to developers and such said, well, you've got to get yourself to about 2,000 people. And if you don't have 2,000 people in your community, those things just won't happen. Once they happen, then once you get to that number, it happens more easily, I guess. It's not just going to happen. So we set out and worked really hard to try to had a lot of meetings with developers, had meetings with property owners, and tried to get it to a place where we could get some growth started. You can see over here next door, we've got this 33 acres developed out now with commercial, multifamily housing, single-family residential, and more growth. Started phase 3 and 4 this year. So that took off. Been working pretty hard to try to get those things done. And you can see now we've got some business, and then that business hits the tax roll, and the tax roll is what gets everybody the stuff that they want in a community. So you've got to grow a little bit in order to get all the things that everybody wants. There's only so much to go around, so the way you get more to go around is to get more on the books. So that's a few of the things. And then also we worked hard to try to get the first responder service set up through the fire department here, and that was a deal where we were trying to get our run times down from our supporting ambulance services from 30 to 45 minutes down to 7 or 8 minutes.
Okay, we kind of tested my memory here. One of the biggest things I remember when I was on served as mayor is when the city has gotten a new sewer system in. And that was quite an undertaking, as Trent well knows, but that was probably one of the biggest projects in the city when I had taken over as mayor. There was also one or two different additions to Richland where they added the new streets and houses and stuff there. Of course, I think there's been probably 3 or so, maybe 4 since then, but that's one of the biggest projects when I was served as mayor that I can remember.
All right, so moving on, we'll start with Armin. So what are your top 3 or however many priorities that you can spill out, I guess, in 2 minutes that you have if you become part of your elected position?
I think one of the concerns I think some of the people in town have is having a ambulance service versus a first responder units service. I do know there are people in town who would rather have the transporting service. So that's one issue. There's other issues with like a community building or service that would provide more opportunities to children to go and do things. But there's a number of projects that has happened and is happening that I think that need to be, there needs to be some good focus put on the direction that Urbana will end up going.
Yeah, sure. Mine would probably be some more commercial growth. If we get Blue Creek to go, that would relieve some taxes and get more money in, so we wouldn't have to raise the tax levy rate like they haven't done for 12 years here because they relied on the growth. I'd really like to work on, we implemented a 7-year plan when Mitch and I got on of what stuff we would grow, buy and kind of itemize that out and did a plan of, and if there was ever grants available and stuff like that. So I'd like to work on possibly getting down to paved streets and sidewalks where some of the seal coat is. We could start a paving project possibly and do a few streets every few years, especially in the older part of town, get rid of the sealed coat. And sidewalks for schools would probably be my biggest priorities.
I think those are both some good ideas. Some of the other things I would like to see, I've heard a lot of talk about it over the years, is different playground equipment for our kids, like a splash pad, stuff like this. I know it costs a lot of money, but we've also spent a lot of money in this town too. Maybe it's time to look after our kids and, kind of help along with that. I think our police department is doing a great job. The only complaint I have is I wish they would patrol more in town and not worry about the interstate. I hear a lot of complaints about that. I think everything has been going pretty good in the city. The streets have really been improving, especially compared to what it was back when I was on the council. We had to do a lot of fighting tooth and nail back then to get paved streets because the people didn't want to pay the increase in property taxes. But I do agree we do need some more sidewalks in town and maybe some more yield signs and less stop signs.
Go ahead, Gary.
Okay. I have a couple of the same goals there. I'd like to see an ambulance service return. I was also on the ambulance for 30 years up here. And I think that our first responders are doing a good job up here, but I think transporting them people are probably just as important, if not more important, getting them people to the hospital. I'd like to see a sidewalk put in, especially on South Street. There's a lot of people that walk on South Street. And there's a lot more kids that walk to and from school that are on South Street. And I don't think we need sidewalks on both sides. I think that between the city and utility companies, they can decide which is the best side to put sidewalks on. But I do believe that sidewalks are very important for the safety of the kids and adults and stuff that go also right on there. I would like to see the library completion being done. I see that's well underway. It looks very nice down there. Also like to see more growth in the city, as Mitch had mentioned before. And so I think growth in the city also brings in a lot of prosperity, and it helps with our tax base, and we can do more with more taxes. And One last thing I'd like to bring up is I'd like to see, or a couple things, I'd like to see some brighter lights put in along the streets and sidewalks. Also like to see a possibility of Urbana having some sort of solar power to power their city buildings. I know it's expensive, but I know also there's probably some sort of help as far as grants and stuff go out there for that. And one last thing I'd like to say, that I think the city's already discussed that, is this wetland that's being created along State Street, Sunset, and Ash Avenue. And to do something to get rid of all those cattails out there. It just isn't that appealing to the city when you're driving through. Oh, sorry.
A lot of things that you guys covered are things that are on and have been on the hit list for me. The parks is a big thing. It's always been a big thing. Part of the deal was the city never had any property to put a park on. With all the development and growth that we've done here in the last 4 years, we now have between 10 and 12 acres of property that we can put a park on, or multiple parks on. So that is definitely a priority, and with that comes a parks board. So we're looking at some people to get involved as parks board members. So that's a thing that I think is great, that we've kind of set ourselves up for. Ambulance service, when we put together the first responders service, it was put together with a bridge gap service in mind, not the end-all be-all of all things. So certainly the ambulance service is, I believe, a priority. And with that, it's funding. So again, everything costs money, and that costs a lot of money. So we've got to figure out where that money comes from and how big of a priority it is for the city of Urbana. Blue Creek Drive, commercial growth. We finally got to a place here now where we're going to get some certifications done, site certifications done. And with that site certification on Blue Creek Drive, that will take one more step out of developers coming in or potential property owners coming in to build. It's one less step that they have to go through to get site ready. So those things we're working on, and with commercial growth comes taxes that feed back into the community. Sidewalk program would be great. We've had some pushback on that in the past, but I think it's needed. We started with a trail project last year that needs some continuation on, that ties into the sidewalks, that ties into the connectivity of the community with Heartland out west and Richland developments here. And then teaming up with the school. I mean, we started doing some more meetings with the school and the superintendent here recently, trying to figure out where their priorities are versus where the priorities of the city are at, and try to get that to a place where we're working together on projects. It's time.
All right. So we have a couple of questions that kind of stem off of some topics that you all discussed about. So the first one will be, do you think the city and school share common goals in community growth? And if so, specifically, what areas do you think we could work together with them on? So we'll start with Josh.
I think we do. I think it's really getting a lot closer than it has been in years past. I think we could work together and do some of these sidewalk projects. There's also been rumors of ball fields coming back to Urbana. We would love to have that happen as a whole community. I don't know, we're just really tied to the school here, kind of. I mean, that's our only thing in town, really. So we always want to be part of it.
Well, yeah, I do think the city and the schools do need to get their heads together and find out what we can do for improvements to help not just improve the city, but improve the safety, especially of our kids going up and down that street. I'm sure most of you guys have known all the kids that travel along these streets going to school. And we are so lucky we haven't had an accident yet with some of these kids getting hit. So we do need to have something working together with the city and the school, whether it's maybe buses that would run up here to pick them up. I know there's supposed to be a mileage thing, but there should also be a safety thing too.
I'd like to see them, we have a lot of kids that are involved in soccer, also with fall football and stuff, and everything is being played down the center point, which is, they have a great field down there. I don't want to take anything away from that, but I think that there's so many kids in Urbana that there's no reason that we couldn't start having some of that stuff done here on our own fields, because we have a good field down there, and start utilizing those. As again, as what you mentioned before, I think that the sidewalks is gonna be one of the biggest things as far as safety and stuff, but I think that between the school and the city, school has grown so much and it continues to grow, I think all these things can be done.
My turn. So yeah, I think the sidewalks are important, and we don't have sidewalks now, and not nearly enough. And as a council and mayor, we've put the emphasis on in the years past when Jerry Michael was police chief. Me specifically, I asked him to be out in the mornings when the kids were on their way into school, kind of herding the kids back to school, and then in the afternoons, making sure everybody was getting back home. And now with Chief Baker on board, trying to do the exact same things. So it isn't a sidewalk, but it's something. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep pushing for sidewalks to get everybody in and out. We have been having meetings with superintendent. We've reached out to each other on a mutual grounds to try to get it where they're understanding what the city wants and vice versa with schools. That's early in that process. That's pretty new in the last few months. So I think it's a great thing because, obviously you can drive past the school grounds here and see that maybe they aren't quite as neat and tidy as the stuff that's in Center Point, and I don't know that we should take a backseat to anybody just because we live in Urbana. So I think some of those conversations are being had and will continue to be had. I do know with a new maintenance staff they have, sounds like they're pretty excited about getting some things tidied up that weren't before. So I think that's very pro on the school side of things. And as to what Josh said, I think there's some stuff in the works with the school side that there may be some sporting and some ball fields and different things that end up rejuvenating here back in Urbana, at least in conversation right now.
Well, a couple things, I guess one of them is talking about the ball fields. I do think Center Point has more than adequate accommodations for everything that's happening over there at Center Point, but I do think that here in Urbana we can probably make our ball diamonds that we do have, we could make those even better than they are, make improvements to them. The issues of the sidewalks are very important. I think keeping the kids out of the streets and a safe place to walk is pretty paramount to getting safety back in the community here. Another thing is the city seems to have and always will have a need for a lot of projects, a lot of things. And you always get tackled with funding. Funding's there's never overabundance of funding. So in the areas of getting grants and applying for grants and doing those kinds of things, I think that's a possibility to tackle some of the burdens that the city does have. Lighting on the streets and the sidewalks and things are critical and important. I think it would be a good idea to get some of that going. The library's coming around. The building is hopefully going to be opening up here in the middle of the winter here, so that'll be another asset to the community. I do think there's quite a few projects that some kind of a rec center or something that could happen with the city parks over here in the new addition. It would open up and give kids something to go do and get involved in. Yeah, there's several things in the community that I've heard from people in town saying that there's a lot of things that the city should be looking at or should be looking into, and they don't feel that anybody's really doing that. So I guess I'm kind of becoming a voice for what I've heard. That's what I'm shooting for.
Perfect. Okay, so moving on, how do you support growth of EMS within our community? And we'll start with Mike. With EMS within our community.
Well, being on the ambulance and the fire department, I know that's really hard to get a lot of people, especially serving on for an ambulance service. We lost the ambulance service because we didn't have enough help. people in town don't volunteer like they used to back when we was growing up as kids. People don't have time, they feel they don't have time to go to school, to become an EMT, paramedic, any kind of first responders. So I think we're in trouble as far as that goes. I think the fire department has a good staff. It's really well educated from what I've heard. They got a great facility over there. But I think as far as the medical services, I don't know if we could support an ambulance right now, because it takes a lot more people to run an ambulance what it does for a first responder unit. And the staffing is very, very hard to do. It's really hard because it has to be staffed 24/7, and it's really, really hard to do that. So I wish they could, I hope they can, but I think that's where they're gonna fall short on is for the first responder. It may be just gonna have to stay as a first responder unit.
Gary?
Excuse me, when the ambulance service was here in Urbana several years ago, they was quite efficient, I believe, with the staff and also their funds. I mean, when I was on the ambulance service, we bought 3 or 4 different ambulances. We did finance those, so we didn't deplete our treasury, but as far as funds go, so the ambulance made enough money off of runs to buy the ambulance and to pay for funding, or pay for training and stuff. As Mike mentioned, yeah, it's very difficult to get people to take all that school for EMT or a paramedic program, but I believe it can be done. It just going to take a lot of work.
Okay, so as I was speaking earlier on, before the fire department brought on the EMR service as first responders, we saw transporting ambulance times 30 to 45 minutes from the time a call went out. It's not, you just can't have it. Should never have that. The calls now with the group of people that stepped up and took EMR certifications, EMT certifications, we have some paramedics, we have quite a variety of people on that, do a great job, and times are down, minutes to get to a call, under 10 minutes. But volunteers as a whole in the world are waning, doesn't matter what it is. And I don't believe you're ever going to get a staffed volunteer transporting ambulance service ever again, probably anywhere in the United States of America, just my opinion. That said, you have to look at staff service. People like North Benton, people like Area Ambulance, people like Center Point, where they have a staff service, and with the staff service comes cost. So do we need it? Absolutely we need it. Is the volunteer service going to take care of it? Probably not. No matter how good a group of people you put together, that's a huge burden. And there's people that do it for a living. So you need to try to figure out how to get a group to staff an ambulance service in this town to take care of that. Doesn't necessarily mean that there would be not first responders as a bridge gap still. But I think the goal is to get to a transport service out of this town, in this community. Because it isn't just the town. You're talking about outlying community here as well. So that'd be my opinion. I'm pro for it, I have been. It's always just been a function of cost. So trying to figure out how to get that funded is a big deal. We've done a lot of research to try to figure out what that dollar amount is. And it's all based off of runs and run times. So with this EMT service running now, or EMR service, do you have an idea of how many runs we're running?
Go ahead.
Good data.
I did take on a task of trying to get an ambulance service back here about roughly 3 or maybe 4 years ago. And I learned a lot in that process. There's some things that was going on. I didn't even have any idea what was happening. But nonetheless, in my venture of trying to get the ambulance service to come back into Urbana, found out there's a lot of volunteers around that are willing to get, if they don't already have, their certifications needed to be able to transport individuals who need transport. Some people are not locally from this community, but they are willing to come to this community to help serve on an ambulance service. So that was one of the things. Funding was another one. the ambulance service to survive on its own 2 feet. There definitely was some trouble in the staffing of the ambulance. I think that some of the runs weren't turned over maybe as fast as they should have been. And then there's always the problems of people who don't have insurance to pay for an ambulance service and that kind of thing. So there are a lot of different problems in the ambulance. I was on the ambulance for a few years there, but I just think that the ambulance service is something the community does want, and I would be willing to fight for that, but that's probably a few years down the road before that'll happen. As far as the funding for the ambulance, I do know that the Mary Drifts money was traded off in that exchange with Center Point. And I did have some discussion with Center Point about the possibility of getting any of that money back. And I wasn't told factual evidence face-to-face that it was absolutely would come back to Urbana, but I was led to believe that possibility that it possibly could happen, that we could get that money recovered. The person that was on the Center Point ambulance and directing that at that time, he's not with us any longer, so I don't know where any of that might stand. But I would like to see an ambulance come back into the community of Urbana. I do think the first responders are doing an outstanding job. Sorry.
I'm all for it. I think the way we get there is growth, and that's that 2,000 mark is what everybody tells us, or assisted living, or something where we get a bunch of calls basically to offset it maybe. As far as the EMS, I'm all for it. We had conversations this week of maybe trying to get a stipend for some of these guys, because it's like 175 calls this year or whatever. So you're talking a couple times a week at least, maybe 3-4 times. And they're doing it all for free, so I do think we should give them something. You can't pay them an hourly wage since they're volunteer, but you can give them a stipend. That's the way I'd like to go with it. Or we do pair with North Benton and they station an ambulance here at some point when we get to that growth stage maybe. That's about all I got on that.
Okay. Yeah.
Started with me.
So we have just another question specifically for the mayor candidates, please. So in your opinion, what is the biggest need the city has? And as mayor specifically, how would you lead the city to achieve that? And you can start. Great.
I can't tell you what our biggest needs are besides public safety. And I want to go back to again, open up that, with the ambulance service. We have a good fire department, we have a good police department. But I think public safety as far as sidewalks and well-lit sidewalks and stuff are important for us, protect our kids and our citizens.
Pretty easy. I don't know that any of us that live in this community want to be North Liberty or Tiffin that's gone from 1,500 to 5,000 in a year, or any community like that. But growth is what it's going to take for us to get some of the things that we want, we need here. And as much time as we've spent trying to get some growth done, and we've been successful with some of it, the magic number is getting the census, not just going around and polling everybody as to how many people live here. The census data has to say you're 2,000 people. And that doesn't include anybody that has a Center Point address, a Vinton address, or anybody that touches town that's you could throw a baseball to. And those things hurt us because we don't show that we're as big as we are. And so the only way we can get some of these things funded is to get our growth rate up. And that gets us to a place where we're trying to bring in more commercial development, more residential, more people living here, more people into the school district. All those things go hand in hand to get us to the place where we can do a lot of these things that otherwise would be coming out of our general fund. And when everything comes out of the general fund, there's only so much to go around. So you have to pick your poison. And that gets to be pretty hard when we have budget workshops in January and February trying to figure out what money gets to go where for that year, because there's only so much to go around. Growth will get us to what we where we want to go. That's my opinion.
Okay, we'll go back to opening up to all candidates. So we've had several questions about communication to community members. So what are some ideas that you have to improve communication within Urbana, A? And B, do you support bringing back the newsletter? And if not, how do you plan to communicate to every citizen within the city? I think you can start.
You know, being and everybody up here has been involved in council at some point, or mayor, or some sort of public office. You need to come to the council meetings. That's the first thing. I mean, there's several people that do come regularly, but it's open to the public to come in and sit down and listen to what we're talking about. And you know, probably we get 3 to 5 people at a meeting. Most council meetings, show up, come in. Always been open to having people talk, even outside of public input. Maybe sometimes too much. But we let it go and we have general conversations, so we're pretty open. So be involved. You know, we can get the information out on the website. We can get it out on the billboards and the signs, posting in the post office, Facebook, social media. We can get it all those places. But I would tell you the best place to come get it is come in here on the Wednesday of council meeting night and get involved. And we talked about volunteers a lot tonight already. You know, just showing up and sitting down and understanding what we're doing and why we're doing it. That's kind of volunteering. You may not be given a job that day, but you should show up. That's how you can understand what's going on.
As far as the communication link with the public on city issues and things that are going on, I just have a feeling that some of the community residents don't want direct involvement. They don't come to council meetings. They don't get involved per se in those manners. But the newsletter, for one thing, when the water bills are sent out, the newsletter that came along with that kind of kept everybody somewhat informed. So I don't know that there's a good way to improve or capitalize on communication links to the public. I think there's probably some areas that can be improved on, but I don't have a good input as to what to do or how to do that.
Like Mitch said, there's very little participation in meetings. Probably 3 of them are here that are here all the time. We've tried putting stuff on Facebook. We've updated the website. If we want to, we can go to a forum like this and tape it like some other cities. I assume there would be somebody who could do that for us. As far as a newsletter, that just went away because of a cost. We figured it out, I believe, between $5 and $6 per packet to send to each person. So we just decided that it was probably cheaper in the long run to just put it online and go that route. So that's how that decision came about. That's all I got.
You answered the newsletter. I didn't know what the cost was. You know, I know they're still spending 50 cents or whatever it is for a stamp for the bills. But I can understand if it's going to cost that much. It is. Yeah, exactly. I think the council and the mayor needs to maybe communicate more. I know it is hard. When the people do come up to the meeting, all they want to do is complain, usually. That's what they come up for. They don't come up to tell the council and mayor, you guys are doing a swell job. That just don't happen, because it never happened in the past. But I think the council and mayor maybe you guys are already taking phone calls, I don't know. And that should be a limit on that too. After a certain time of night, no calls. But I think the council, if you're going to be on the city council and the mayor, you should be willing to answer some calls from the public, you know, and maybe not a weekend either, maybe a weekday thing, no weekends, nothing after 8 or 9 o'clock. But I think that would be a help on the communications.
Understand the cost of that and why we got rid of it, why the city got rid of it. I think the biggest thing is just for people to get more involved, go to like the farmer's market, talking to people, and as Mike mentioned too, you guys get phone calls or emails, and most of the time all that is just complaints. And the complaints are just usually based upon for themselves, not for the good of the city. But I think communication between the city council and the citizens is important. But yeah, you get tired of the complaining after a while, if that's what it is. But I think that probably the silent majority of the people are in favor of everything that's been going on around here.
Okay. So kind of stemming off of that, if you were approached by a community member about their water bill being too high, and you were in the public, how would you respond? And you can go first, Josh.
The water bill basically came about when they had to build the new wastewater treatment plant, and they had to finance several $1 million, and that's just how it is getting repaid. I think we're still owe $1 million some dollars, and once we get it balanced out, we're probably going to try and balance the water and the wastewater to equal out a little more different. But for now, we have to keep paying that loan, and it was just forced down by the DNR, and a lot of small towns are faced with that, so there's not much we can do at this point. Besides, that's it, yeah.
I'm one to complain about the water bill. I think it is too high. I know back when they had to do the wastewater treatment plant, the bills went up. I came to that meeting. I think Gary and I was on the police department. They asked us to come up because they had a packed room up here and the people couldn't understand it. Well, is that water bill going to go down after this $1 million gets paid off? Probably not. You know, they said back then it was going to. I don't think it will. And I wish we could do something to get this water bill down. It is too high, but what are we going to do? Maybe we need, I don't know if there's some more grants we can get to help. I don't know if you can get grants for something that's already done or not, but it's something that could be looked at to help cut the cost on this, because it is too high. We all know that.
My understanding of the question is if a person had a bill that was too high because of overusage, I don't know if that's what the deal is, but the city does have a code to go by, and everybody needs to be treated fairly on that. You know, if you say you're going to cut, okay, we're going to cut your water bill in half or charge it for the sewer, that's fine as long as it's agreed upon and it's done that way, and it's uniform, it's done that way with everyone. But as far as water prices going down or sewer prices going down, you know, I can't see that it's going to, because you still have to put money back into that infrastructure. So I think it's probably going to maintain that.
So, yeah, I guess everything gets more expensive as life goes on, right? So garbage goes up every year as a cost to the city. The majority of the cost of the water bill that you get either in the mail or paying automated, it comes from the sewer side of things. The wastewater treatment plant has been built for over a decade, might even be close to 12 years, 11 years now. If you look at some of the communities around us, they're about to experience that now. So you can see the project going on in Center Point, right along the interstate. They're about to get a $13 million-ish wastewater treatment plant. So they're about to be now where we were 10 or 12 years ago. Vinton is headed down the same road. They need to update by DNR standards. There's probably several others. So we're going to be to a place where we'll have that paid off here in another couple of years. Will the actual water bill go down? I don't know that it will. Like Josh said, we may switch that more so that the water and the sewer are more 50-50-ish, if you will, as far as what portion of your bill goes to that. But the garbage goes up every time we get contracted, whether it's the garbage service or the landfills, and that's all part of your bill too. It's one of those things that we just got it before a lot of other people had it, and everybody's going to feel the consequences eventually, even the city of Marion. And they're not, you know, they're a lot bigger than we are. As far as bills go, we have had several people come in referring to what Gary was talking to. If you have a system fault in your house, water softener, toilet, something that runs and you end up with an inordinate water bill. When I say water bill, that's water, sewer, and garbage. You know, we've sat down and talked with several people recently at meetings, and if you can prove that you had a problem and you fixed it, then we'll sit down and figure out a fair solution for everybody.
I think that back in the late 80s, early 90s, when I was on the council before, a lot of residents in the community was complaining either about sewer rates or water rates or different issues that what happened back in those years. Here we are in the early 2000, 2021. But budget meetings, I think, are very important. And I think if the city has concerns with rates, and they think that they're collecting more money than what they need to collect, and they're stationing money in an account somewhere, I would invite any of those residents to come up and speak their mind about what's going on, because historically, from the past to current, I don't think the city is, I think the rates are fair rates. We're paying for what we're getting. When I go to my tap, I get good water. When I go to the sewer, if you haven't, nobody in town has not gone down to the sewer plant. I know that Trent would love to take anybody through that sewer plant to show them what we have now that we didn't have before. So again, with improvements in the community, I think that those rates that we're being charged are fair rates. That's my opinion.
Perfect. Okay. So what is your view on the nonprofit organizations or volunteer-run programs within the community, and how do you envision their future? How do you envision their future, and how do you continue to make them successful? So basically, how are we going to get more people to be involved in things within our community, and what will you do to help support those nonprofits like the fire department, visioning committee, the other Legion auxiliary, those types of things? And you can start, Mike.
That's a tricky question. I don't know how you get people to volunteer. Several years ago, we put signs on the side of the ambulance and drove it around and saying the ambulance is going to shut down unless we get volunteers. That didn't work. We put it on newsletters back then. We needed help on the ambulance, even on the fire department too. The fire department has heard before for help, but it was mainly the ambulance. And I just don't know the solution to get the people to come up and help, or if we can, how we're going to get the funding unless there's grants available. God, if you raise the taxes more, you're going to have more complaining, and I know the city doesn't want any more complaining. I don't know if the city even gives taxes anymore for like the EMS, if they just do it for the fire department or not. Back when we was on the ambulance, the city quit giving taxation money for the ambulance, but I don't know if they are now for the first responders or not. And that's my fault, because I don't come up here to these meetings and find out.
And groups like the Vision Committee, I know that they busted their butts. The Vision Committee, they used to put on the town celebration, and they got to where it was a big job for them. And when I was, years ago, I started up the JC chapter here. It used to be the JC, the Women's Auxiliary, and the fire department put that on. And it was a big deal, but it's a lot of work for them people, and it's constant work. And the only way that they're going to, I don't think there's going to be, I don't know about funding and stuff, but the only way that they're going to get help is having volunteers, and you got to some way magically wave a wand or something for these people to start volunteering to do this thing. But I know that you guys have been on these committees and these departments have just put in a lot of work, and you deserve credit for it. But and I don't know a good solution how to get these nonprofits and stuff going for the city again. Not at this time, anyway.
So volunteering is hard. We've talked about it a lot tonight. Even, there's several people that do a really great job of volunteering in our community. There's some that don't volunteer at all, and some that aren't able to volunteer. I think open-mindedness within organizations is probably one of the first things that would be beneficial to everybody in the community. There's a lot of what I call transplants to Urbana. There's a lot of people that aren't from Urbana. There's a lot that are. Some of those people don't know how to get involved, and communication is key. So communicating what your group is, what does the Lions Club do? What does the Visioning Committee do? What does the Legion do? Are you open to bringing people in, bringing members in? All those things, I think probably you have to effort pretty hard to try to draw a handful of volunteers to get in. I don't think you could expect to have dozens of people come out of the woodwork to join those. So when we're gifted with some of the people that are involved in those things, I think we need to support them best we can when they do community events, when they do breakfasts, when they do different fundraising things for their certain, it's important. You can't take them for granted, because that's how you get less and less volunteers, because volunteering is hard, and you don't get paid for it because you're a volunteer. So the less people that show up and participate and get involved in that, the harder that's going to be as time goes on. So I think we just need to communicate better with our groups and support them when they're putting forth some sort of fundraiser.
I would say with the, kind of like Mitch was lighting on, there are people around town that could volunteer, and some people that would be very good at their task and accomplishing what their goal is. You have a tornado move through town and tear everything up, and you'll have neighbors, you'll have people coming around to help. They're not looking for pay. They volunteer. They clean things up. So with essentially any of these of the groups, I think that the fire department we have now, they're shorthanded during the day, but they've got plenty of staff to go for weekend calls and that kind of thing. It is hard to get people to volunteer. It's hard to get them involved, but communication is the key. If you can give them the idea or give them get the information to them and communicate with them that there's a need, and somebody that's good maybe with fishing after grants to get grants to help fund and support some of these things. I do know that the tail end of the ambulance service, I do know that there was some talk that the legislation in Iowa was going to be changed, and it was going to find probably a penny or something to help fund the ambulance services throughout the state, because Urbana wasn't the only one that's suffering with a service going down. But I think communication is an important thing to keep things going, and then the volunteers is the best. So you can get volunteers to donate their time, help the cause. That's probably the best way to handle a lot of that.
I've been struggling with this for the last year and a half with Knights of Columbus, trying to get volunteers, and if you just call the person, they will volunteer. If you do the one-on-one, it's a lot easier to get them to come. And if you get them there and you see what you're doing, then they want to come back and do that type of thing. Same thing happens at church. If you talk to somebody one-on-one, it seems to help. And I think a lot of these places that we're talking about, if they would, if they know somebody that would want to, that they think would be a good volunteer, if you would just pick up the phone and call them or stop by and say hi and kind of get a relationship with them, there's a pretty good chance they're going to come help you. Okay.
Well, we all know that COVID has been on the forefront of things for the last year and a half or so. So we received some money for the American Rescue Plan, or also known as the COVID Relief Funds. What are some priorities, and how will it be determined how the city utilizes that money? Gary?
This money that all these government agencies are getting, I don't know how it's supposed to be used, because I don't know how it's supposed to be broke down or what they can use it for. But I think that it's important that the council as a whole can make a good decision on what to use things for, whether they use it for safety for people in Urbana, whether they use it for libraries, whatever. Just don't know how it's supposed to be broke down, or who's supposed to be getting that, or how it's supposed to be sent, so I can't really voice my opinion on how it's supposed to be dispersed or who to.
So we have a lot of ideas thrown around about what to use this money for. And it turns out we really need to have a meeting with ECOG and have them tell us what we can use the money for, because it is, of all the ideas that council and otherwise have put out there, really maybe one of them is allowed to be used to be funded with this COVID relief money. So it isn't just, can't go buy a playground, can't put in sidewalks, can't go pave a street, all the things that, you can't build a trail, all the things that you would think that you could go use COVID money, COVID relief funding money for, can't use it for. So we are trying to get a meeting put together with them to sit down and explain to us what we can use the money for. Once we know what we can use the money for, then we can lay out the options for where we can spend it. That's probably the hardest part, or has been, because some of the things that in my mind would be no-brainers as to where you'd go spend that money to get people outdoors, to get people at a playground, to get people on a trail, doesn't qualify. So until we get to that place where we know what we can use that money for, it's hard to talk about what we're going to spend the money on. I can tell you that we have half the money now. We'll get the second half of the money July 1 of next year. And then we have until 2024 to spend that money. So we don't have to run out right now with your hair on fire and spend it, because we don't have to spend it right away. But we do need to identify what we can spend it on. And we have some time to get kind of tactical as far as where we're going to put that money.
I have a bank account if you need one to hold it in. Yeah, I think not knowing really where we can spend money, where we can't. So I do think it's probably important the city meet with them, find out what money can be spent on and that kind of thing. I do know that there's been talks about trails and a Veterans Memorial thing going on, different activities that people have discussed and talked about and so forth, but without having further knowledge myself, I can't tell you exactly where I'd like to see that money go. I wouldn't want to do the wrong thing, obviously, but there's several projects that could all be split down into and to help with funding of getting a lot of these projects up and running or started.
Kind of drawing up a plan of where to spend this money, but I don't know that any of them are on that list. So once again, we're kind of up in the air on what we can spend it on. So I guess until we find out, how much we can do.
We don't know what we can spend the money for, so how can we say anything? I'd like to see it maybe put in senior housing. It'd be great to have that here. For a lot of, I'm getting old, I might need it here soon. Maybe some rent. We don't have any housing around Urbana for rent, and we need some desperately. And I don't know what we can do. Maybe it's something like that we could use it for. So.
What is your position on the library levy? And if it is not approved, where does that leave the funding for the library?
That was one of the things that was kind of hanging out there when I first started as mayor, first term, and everybody in this room is aware that we kind of reversed course on the building that we were working on, that the library was working on to put the library in. We sold that building, built the public workshop that we needed terribly, and then gave the library the ability to move into the building that they're building out now, and also gave them their money back to build it out. So I guess my stance is that we're pro-library, I'm pro-library, and the council has been pro going forward to see if they can get it put together and make a go of it. We've budgeted for library dollars. We've looked at forward budgeting for librarians and different things as the build-outs get going and completing, and been very transparent with the library board as to where our stance is as a council. I think that the levy that's going to be on the ballot will really show you what the community's overall support is for the library as a community, not just as a council. So it'll be interesting to see where that falls. And that, that money would be a boost to the library going forward. It isn't the end all be all of the library. It's truly up to the council's decision at budget time to keep that project going and going either short term or forever. So I think, we're for it and we're moving forward with it. And I think we're farther along now than we've ever been. And I think that's a great thing. And be interesting to see how it sorts out on election night.
Can you rephrase the question, or repeat the question?
Yeah.
Please.
Maybe. What is your position on the library levy? And if it doesn't get voted in, what is your, or where does that leave the funding for the library?
Well, I would say the library is a pretty important deal. I believe that the majority of the community, I believe, is in support of the library. But the funding for the library, I would assume that there would be a library committee that would handle most of their funding and treasury and so forth. If it's up to the council to handle that, then we'd have to, as a council, decide where the funding would be used and kept and so forth. So.
Sure. For the library, I think the funding is now easier to see now that the library is actually getting somewhere after 30 years. I'm pretty confident the tax levy will be fine. It's not that big a grab we're asking for. And if it doesn't pass, then we'll have to adjust. Maybe we won't have a full-time library and we'll go part-time. I mean, we'll make it happen.
Well, Gary and I was talking about the library the other day. I think the library's good. I think there's other, we can also, if it doesn't pass, almost everybody has computers in their houses. They can get to almost everything that's going to be in the library. Not for sure. I guess I would like to know how the library is going to be funded. Is it also funded by the rural people that's going to be able to come in and use it? Or do they have to pay when they walk in the door to use this? I think it should be, if it's going to be funded and the rural people can use it, I think they should have to help pay for it. If they don't, if it doesn't pass, that's up to the city council because they're the ones that's been going on this, and it should be their opinion on how they're going to spend the money. I know this library has been working for years and years on getting it done. So if it goes through, it's great. But if it don't, the city's got to make their decision of what they're going to do with the money. But I'd also, like I said, I'd also like to know if the rural people is going to have to help pay for this if they're going to use it.
I'm very much pro-library. I gotta be because my wife reads all the time. I do think that the levy's gonna pass. I think $50 a year on your taxes is not a substantial increase. I mean, our taxes go up every year, but that's just a small fraction of what our taxes do go up. I think that the library is important. Not only can it be used as a library, but it can be used as other functions. If the scouts can meet in there or do whatever, I think it's still another good building to use. If it doesn't pass, which I'd be surprised, but I think we're going to go back to the volunteer again. But I know one gal is going to retire this next year that reads all the time, and she can spend some time down there. But I think that you'd be surprised how many people may decide to go down there and volunteer their time that are readers such as my wife Bobby is. But I think that this is a good deal, and I do hope it passes.
Next question. What is your position on using TIF revenue for economic development, and how would you use it? Economic development?
Set up in the community right now, I'm not really followed that, I guess, but the TIF monies that come into the city should be spent in those districts. When you have a major lot improvement on a lot that's in the older part of the community, and if it has a TIF district, I do think that those monies should be kept in that district. But a lot of the funding for TIF is, I mean, there's rules and regulations you have to follow and all that anyway, so I think the city's done that and is doing a good job with it.
Without the TIF, we wouldn't have this development. It's hard to get a developer to come to town without offering them kind of a partnership. We took a trip out to West Des Moines where they don't have to do that. I mean, everything was sold before they even broke the ground. And we're in a little different situation where you got to work with the developer to get them here. And we have done the TIF a little different. We've made it so that it's paid back, not over 20-some years. It's paid back in 7 years. So I think we've really wised up on how to use the TIF, and we have a guarantee to get our money back is how we move forward on our projects in the last couple of years.
I'm glad to hear the TIF money is paid back sooner than later like it used to be. But I agree with Armin, the TIF money should stay in the TIF district. That's what it was gathered for, and that's what it should be used for.
Year deal, payback on the TIF, and it probably was a 20th at one time, but I think that the tax increment financing is important because that's what's built our community so far and built all these additions to raise our tax base, excuse me, to keep the development going.
I'm obviously pro-TIF. The developers that are out looking to put in commercial, residential subdivisions or otherwise are looking for something. In partnering with them, using TIF is great for the city because the city isn't depleting their cash by funding it by writing a check, so to speak. So if we can use TIF dollars to incentivize a builder to come in and build a subdivision versus writing a check, it's great. Traditionally, schools are a little bit when it comes to TIF because some of that money gets kept back from the schools. In talking with our schools and our superintendent in meetings, they're pretty pro-TIF because by funding residential subdivisions, that brings more people to the community, that brings more students into the school district. That's growth. So we are pretty fortunate that we've got a very pro school system when it comes to TIF, at least my view on the city side of things. And then if you don't have to spend your cash coffers, you can go do other things that need to be done in the community now with that cash. If you deplete your general fund and deplete your reserve cash, it takes a long time to get your reserve cash back. By putting it out in a TIF district and funding some of those things in that manner, seems to work well for the developers that we've worked with, and it works well for the city because it doesn't change much of anything that we're doing in the immediate now, trying to do different projects.
Okay, in regards to grants, how will you help the city take advantage of these opportunities? I think you're up.
Sure. I think EasyCog is kind of our go-to for grants. When we did our big 7-year plan, that's part of how we were supposed to find out if there was any grants. And I think we'll keep moving with another longer plan. We're just about out of this one. And I assume there's going to be a pile of grants if they pass all this funding at the federal level. We're just going to have to get after the grants.
I agree. This ECOG has been used for years and years now, and it's a thing that's really helped the city out a lot in affording to buy different things or get different things built, so I think that's the way they should stay.
I agree too. I mean, grants are very important. They've always been important to small towns such as Urbana because I mean, basically, we couldn't afford to do a lot of the stuff that we've done if we didn't have grants. So I think our grant opportunities, whenever they come along, we should take full advantage of them.
So not only with ECCOG do we have relationships that are funneling grant opportunities, but we work pretty closely with Benton Development Group over in Benton. So that group is solely looking out for the development of Benton County. ECCOG is much broader. They have a really great staff over there, and they are constantly looking for Urbana in our community for things to put here, whether it's grants, Main Street projects, grants for developers to come into Blue Creek Drive, grants for developers or builders to come into Hutton Drive or Town Center. So yeah, we're constantly looking for those things. In recent years, there hasn't been nearly as much of that out there as there has been. Like Josh said, there looks like there's probably some more coming with legislation that's being discussed right now at a federal level. So we'll have to see, but it comes down to communicating with the people that know about those grant opportunities. And then, you know, Tracy writes some grants for us. We have Benton Development Group that writes some grants for us. You know, then there are other people that are just grant writers. And if you can find a good one that does that for a living, you can get a lot of traction because they know how to write the grant to get you what you need or what you want. So I think just sourcing that is key, making sure you have all of the connections that you can have when it comes to the grants.
I would agree with that. I think the ECOG and the TIF districts, all those things are tools that the city can use to advance and get steps ahead where you normally wouldn't have the funding to be provided to do some of the things that the city has done. So I think that they're all highly necessary. Recently, listening now tonight to some of the TIFs that have been reduced in the amount of years that they use the TIF, I think that's financially good for the city. So I would say that all of those are tools that the city should be utilizing to our advantage. Yep.
All right. So what are some ideas that you have to promote Urbana for PR type things? So like Vinton just added their Glow Trail. Marion added like the sun thing at Lau Park. So what is something that we could add to our community that would draw people to come here and support the businesses that we're hoping to open or have? You can start.
That's a hard one. You know, we already have a hard enough time getting volunteers. And then I guess that would be a good thing to open up for the public, like through our, you know, our business letter. We don't have a business letter anymore, but emails and stuff like this to open up to the city residents for ideas for this. I don't know, that's, number one thing would really be nice if we just clean up our community. It's a mess around here. We got a lot of messy neighbors. And I wish that would get taken care of first, and maybe if we clean off our own front porch, everything else would fall into place.
I think one of the big things that's helped in Urbana is when they put these new lights and stuff in on Sunset and also on Union. I think that would just made a terrific improvement. It made Urbana look a lot better. I think if they promote the idea that we have a top-notch fire department, police department, city hall, public works, and everything else, if people know that, they would be willing to move in here because they have the protection to take care of it.
So I don't think I can lump it all into one item. There's really several items in the basket, I guess, so to speak. And the things that we've done in recent years, like the street lights, the paving projects on Sunset and Richland, are all things that make us show better. The certification of the sites on Blue Creek Drive, you know, ClickStop is awesome. They're a great company to have in Urbana, but they're the only ones out there on Blue Creek Drive right now. So working to get some of those sites certified and different things in place to make it more attractive for developers or business owners to come build there are critical. You know, it's contagious. Building is contagious. As soon as one starts, the next one starts, and people see activity, and the next thing starts. It's just how things happen. There's going to be a roundabout project that's going to start out here at the corner of 150 and Sunset in April, and that's going to slow a lot of traffic down coming into town. So I think with the space that we have here in the new town center addition, we've got about 9, almost 10 acres of green space, park space. We have a huge opportunity to put something in there that is landmark as far as something park related, to show how our community looks and how we're moving forward. So I think that we have some opportunities that are critical here in the next 2 years to make that really show the direction of Urbana.
One of the things I see is as the community does grow and we become more of a bedroom community than we have been in the past, giving Dwayne Eldridge some credit here in the back room, I can remember the years when I was on the council before and Dwayne said that Benton County is the front door to Benton County. And in a big way, that's with the interstate out here, that's so true. But yet when it comes to promotional opportunities and communication links and things like that, we really haven't hit the big one yet. We haven't got the big factory to come in and build the John Deere tractors, or Amazon to come in and put up a big warehouse. We haven't really hit the big ones yet. But when you do look over the few years that's gone by here, we've got FedEx out there, we've got the motel out there, we've got, which I didn't think was going to last long, but obviously the pallet factory out here is still with us. Benton County REC built the new building. I think communication with the business industry, if they realize that we're halfway between Dubuque and Marshalltown, halfway between Waterloo, Cedar Falls, and Cedar Rapids, Hiawatha, Marion, when we can get that connection made and get something bigger to come into the Urbana area, I think it will help the residents. It'll help in a very big way. So I would like to see something being pushed in that direction. I think that's one of the bigger ways for the city to grow.
I think the biggest draw right now is going to be the bike trail and the coffee shop. I think that's just going to draw in a ton of people. It's going to be a perfect day trip for people out of Cedar Rapids and Robbins area. Blue Creek, I think that's why we are here at FedEx, because we're so centrally located. So there's a huge opportunity to get some industry here. We're 4 hours from all the major cities, and that's why we are here. And you see conveyor engineering moved out here they just wanted to be out here. There's a few other small businesses that would like to be here, but we don't have the buildings, so we just got to find somebody to build the buildings, and they'd be here.
All right, so one last question here, and then we'll let you each do your closing remarks. So how do you plan on involving residents in the decision-making process of things that you plan to implement within the community during your term?
Well, that's a good question, too. I don't know. I think the biggest thing is going around and talking with these people, as Josh had mentioned before. You got to call them or go into the door and knock on their door and tell them what's going on, tell them what they're going to need, what we need, and stuff. But I think communication between the city council and mayor and stuff, I think, is important.
So, like I said earlier, I invite everybody and anybody to come into a council meeting. It's a great place to hear what's going on, and at the beginning of every meeting, you get the potential to sit down and speak your opinion for 3 minutes, whether it's an opinion or you have an idea, whatever it is, come. We have a lot of high school kids that come. On the nights that we have high school kids that are in here for their government class, there's more here in this room than are in here now. Maybe they don't want to be here, but they have to be here, and and we enjoy it because they all ask questions and come up afterwards. So I think just communicating is important. I mean, that's one of the reasons I continue to run. Is I have people that reach out and say, "This is what we would like. This is what we want. Why can't we do this?" So we're listening to the community now, and that's why I would think everybody that's up here is probably had a bug in their ear, and that's why they're here to run, because there's things that people specifically want done. But email, phone calls, social media, but I would say most importantly is show up. Come in and come to the meeting.
I think some of the key points that the residents have made in Urbana here just recently is when I put my name in the hat for the ballot box for the city council seat. it was at that time that I realized that there's more people listening in the community to what's going on than I really gave them credit for. I think that they've made contact with me, they voiced their concerns, they've made comments and complaints, but they've made their voices heard, and they're hopeful that somebody will sit on the council seat that will pay attention to that. And so I think that the mayor's position and the council seats are important to the citizens of Urbana. So I think that somebody that will listen to them and share their ideas with them is what they're hoping to get involved in city council business.
Sure, so I'm always around. I'm with people all day long. I'm at FedEx, I see hundreds of people every day. See tons of people at church, even at the Dollar General or school. I work for school too, so I'm always around, and if anybody wants to say anything, send me an email or phone, or just come talk to me.
Yeah, I believe that transparency is the big thing. Like I said earlier, if we don't take phone calls from the city, we're not gonna know what happens unless somebody comes up here and complains. And I think it's really important, if somebody's gonna call to complain about something, and I know they're waiting to call to tell you you've done a good job, but we need to take them calls and see if we can take care of their problems either right away or at the next council meeting. But I think transparency is a big thing with the city council and the mayor.
Perfect. All right, so we'll give each person 2 minutes to do closing comments. You can go ahead.
First of all, I want to thank the Visioning Committee for putting this on. I think it's a great opportunity for people that don't know who we are, they can hear our views. I also think it's great to see so many people interested in city government that also wanted to basically volunteer their time, because that's what this is a lot of volunteering of time there. I want to say good luck to all the candidates, and I hope everything turns out great, and whoever wins this election, I'm sure they'll do just as good a job as what's been going on. So thank you.
So, yeah, thank you guys for putting this on. This is always great when you do it. Appreciate everybody that came up tonight to sit in on it. And we've got a great AV team here tonight, so we're broadcasting live, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I think for me, you know, I've been doing this for 4 years, and I feel like we've got a lot of positive motion accomplished in town. You know, we got to a place where we're either second or first fastest growing community in Benton County, which is a big step, I think, based off of, you know, where we were at before, kind of waiting for some momentum. And we've got a lot done. There's a lot more in the works already that will happen as we get into spring. Obviously, it's already getting cold and nasty. So that'll kind of woe up until spring. But I think in the spring, you'll see a lot more coming, like what you see over here with the coffee shop and Fiber Heart. So, you know, outside of that, we just need to continue to, you know, put some of these things in place that we talked about tonight. You know, that's budget time comes in January, and we all sit around and beat each other up over where we're going to spend the money and where we want to spend it the best for the community. And you know, I look forward to trying to give you that for another 2 years.
I think the community has been built on votes, either through the council or through the citizens. But I'm glad that the people in the community can vote on these candidates and select who they want. I've heard some complaints of issues within the city that in some ways it kind of affects me, probably in a poor manner, I guess, but I think we've got staffing throughout the city that is very superb. I do think that Urbana has and still continues to move in a very positive and very productive manner. And also to each and every one of the candidates, I wish them the best of luck, like Gary said, in their run for seats. I guess when the day comes and everybody votes, we'll know what's going to happen here. So,
I'd just like to thank everybody for coming. Thanks for the visioning committee. I guess it's been a fun 4 years, and I'd like to keep going with it. I think there's a lot more to finish that we've started. And I enjoy volunteering my time. I think it's just fun coming to the meetings and working with everybody, and I just like it a lot. So I'd like to keep it going.
Well, I too would like to thank the visioning committee for this. You know, we've talked a lot about different things tonight. I'd like to see some of them things taken care of, like the playgrounds. We need some improvement there. I'd like to see some housing go up for rents. I'd like to see some senior citizen housing go up. We also need, the sidewalks is very, very important, especially for our public safety, for our kids and our grandkids. I think that's, you know, what we listened to tonight, that's probably one of the main things that everybody really agreed on, is that we need them sidewalks. And maybe that would be a good place for our Benton County Development to help us out or get some grants for it and get started on that instead of waiting 5 years down the road. I think it needs to get started on sooner than later. I've volunteered most of my life in Urbana, and I figured, you know, I'm retired. I'm retiring off my security job at the end of this year, so I'm going to have even more time. And I also do help for Meals on Wheels, which we desperately need some help on that for volunteers. It's really getting low, and if we don't keep it up, some of these seniors aren't going to have their meals 3 days a week. I did receive a phone call here a few weeks ago thinking that since the Bensons want to be on the city council and the mayor position, that we're after our city employees. That is the furthest thing from the truth. I think our city employees do an excellent job, and yeah, there's some things they can improve on that I think maybe it's not the right way, but I'd like to talk to Trent and the other guys about it, but I definitely not after anybody's job, so that's the furthest thing from the truth. So I hope Trent and the other guys can take that out of their mind, because that's not true. I just wish everybody else here luck and hope we get some votes.
Excellent. Well, we thank each of you candidates for coming and to run for election and for your dedication to the community. Also, thank you everyone for coming as guests and those who are listening online. Again, I encourage you to get out and vote and also to get involved within our community. So we have allotted about 30 minutes. If you guys are willing to meet with people one-on-one, we would be happy to do that. Again, this isn't a debate, and we don't want any personal attacking, so we can just continue on as we go. So if anyone wants to speak, you can come on up and individually direct questions to them.
But I believe that some of the problems with that would be insurance matters, those kinds of things, somebody get hurt, that kind of thing, and it's after school hours. Yeah, so yeah, I agree with you, Trish, that should be an area that could be used. You just have to get the fine details worked out so it can open the door, but I agree.
Definitely have to ask school board that question, I believe.
Well, the mayor's having a meeting with the school board now, right?
I think it is open a lot. There's a lot of practices in our gym all the time.
No, but I mean, you know, it just would be something, especially this time of year.
Right.
After a day like today, you know. Sunday afternoon. Yeah, I mean, either Saturday or Sunday.
So we'll kind of break the live session, and then again, if you want to meet individually with the candidates, you can feel free.